Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
Let's go ahead and jump right into it, man. And as we're on the topic of, Big H's Seattle Seahawks and the New York Giants matchup on Monday night, it didn't look too great at all for the New York Giants football team. The Seattle Seahawks were able to win that game 24-3. Daniel Jones getting sacked like 11 times, pick six at the goal line, 99-yard return. The New York Giants so far, they're starting off their season 1-3. Saquon has missed the last couple of weeks due to an ankle injury, and things aren't going to get better these next couple of weeks for sure. This upcoming week, in week 5, they have a matchup against the Miami Dolphins. And then in week 6, they follow that up going up against the red hot Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, a team that struggled in week 1 against the New York Jets, have looked like a team that's turned it around. But to get back to the New York Giants, man, this is a team coming off a lot of success last year. They beat my team in the postseason. They absolutely killed us. We had absolutely no answer for them. Going into last year, their whole idea was they were going to go into a rebuild mode, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. Brian Daboll came in, changed the environment, changed the culture. Daniel Jones had himself a very solid year, earned himself $40 million. Actually, I wouldn't go as far as say he earned himself. He robbed them for $40 million. And now they're kind of right back to where they were a couple of years ago. And so the question that I propose to you guys is, did the Giants' success last year ruin their chance at a successful rebuild?
I feel like it kind of handicapped them when they gave Daniel Jones that contract because this team, when you look at it, has multiple holes. They still don't have a true X wide receiver. They don't have a true wide receiver one. They went out and got Darren Waller, but they've been unable to really dial him up and scheme him into this offense and get him the ball as consistently as possible. Saquon's been hurt, which is a huge piece of their offense. Daniel Jones hasn't had that same success running, escaping out of the pocket. He's been under duress. Of course, at the same time, he is playing poorly. Let's get that out the way. I mean, there isn't anything to suggest that he's been playing great, but at the same time, the offensive line has just been absolutely terrible. It's been collapsing almost. It feels like every single play he's under duress, and under those conditions, it's hard for a quarterback to really succeed. But at the same time, Daniel Jones wasn't a quarterback that you were impressed with his throwing ability last year. I understand, he leaned more into a game manager role. He was able to really run with the football and protect the ball, and I think that's what Brian Daboll kind of bought into. But at the same time, handing him that contract, and he wasn't like a volume passer. He's not somebody who's you're really trusting to throw the football 40 times a game. I feel like that's where it kind of handicapped them and sold them dreams about hey, you see, we won a playoff game. That should mean that we can take a step forward. But in reality, there's still a lot of holes in this team. And even coming into the season, I had questions about their offensive line. And Evan Neal has been like an absolute bust, to plain and simple. I don't think he's been anything short of just terrible. And that's a top 10 pick that they went out and drafted. And, this team has a lot of holes. And it's a big question mark to Brian Daboll. I feel like he's been he did enough with his roster. I feel like he turned water into wine basically with this team last year. And now it kind of sold them dreams about where they really are as a team. So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about this roster and whether, given that Daniel Jones, that contract has really handicapped them.
I mean, I really don't think the contract is really going to handicap them. I just feel like the way the roster is built and the type of offense that they have, you can't trust Daniel Jones to throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game. And that's not the type of way he plays. He's more of a, 15 to 20 passes a game managing quarterback where they run the ball a lot. But, situation-wise, like I've been mentioning Evan Neal, a couple of the other O-linemen are, beat down right now. They're injured, so they're missing 2 or 3 guys. Evan Neal, their first-round pick that they drafted, is one of the worst O-linemen in the league, and he's playing, he's complaining. And then, they don't have any one receiver. They don't have a 2 receiver. They really don't have much. And when Saquon's injured and not playing in the game, teams just have a free shoot at Daniel Jones every single time. They're going to blitz. They're going to send the blitz. They're going to say, hey, we know your receivers can't beat us off the line. Your receivers can't beat us down the field. We'll take our chances one-on-one. We'll double Waller and, let Daniel Jones cook. And that's been the case this season, and he hasn't been doing anything lately about that. I mean, the contract to me, obviously it's overpaid, but I don't think it affects the team much. But to me, it's just they have a lot of problems in a lot of other positions other than quarterback as well. Quarterback is a big issue for them, but O-line's an issue. The receiver core is an issue. Some part, their defense is okay here and there. Sometimes they show up here and there, but they still got to fix up on their defense. But offensively, there's a lot of issues. Offensive line, quarterback, and receiver core. We just can't put the blame on Daniel Jones. But I mean, Daniel Jones is the start of it. He got to play better. He got pick that he threw on the goal line. If he waited a second, he had Waller in the back behind Paris Campbell. He had him wide open in the end zone. He could have waited a second. That's why Dabble was pretty heated about that interception, man. He was like, if you just waited half a second, you could have had a touchdown in the back of the end zone. But you rush stuff like that and it doesn't work. So for me, they have a lot of problems going on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, it starts with paying Daniel Jones $40 million. I mean, I don't believe he's the type of quarterback to get $40 million. To me, that's one of the elites of elites to get that type of money. For him to get that off a 15 touchdown season speaks volume. So they got a lot of stuff to fix up on, and Saquon's probably gone. So there's going to be a lot of bigger issues after this year. So we'll see. Plug in your
No, I got it. The New York Giants going into last year, the one thing that everybody expected out of them was for them to go into a full-on rebuild. Brian Daboll comes in, changes the culture, changes the environment. He limits Daniel Jones's turnovers from last year, really allowing him to utilize his legs a lot more than his arm, and it worked out perfectly fine. And they're looking to build on that this past offseason, but unfortunately, the moves that they made this past offseason are absolutely useless right now for them. They didn't go ahead and address their O-line issue. They didn't go ahead and address their receiver issue. And so it's on full display right now, all of their issues they had last year, and it's on display right now. And then on top of that, they signed Darren Waller, but they're not even able to utilize Darren Waller correctly. I mean, Darren Waller had about 2 catches on Monday night. So it was a pretty disappointing outing, especially in a game where there's no Saquon Barkley. You probably want to rely on your 6'6" target in Darren Waller. And then on top of that, I think it's easy to blame Daniel Jones in a situation like this. But at the same time, he's hurting his case. He's hurting any argument to protect him because the turnovers are back. And that was a big issue for Daniel Jones throughout his entire career so far, leading up until this point. Last year, I think it was just a one-off year. He limited his turnovers like crazy. The fumbling issues were gone. The interceptions were down. And so now, only 4 weeks into the season, Daniel Jones has one more interception than he did last year. The fumbles are starting to come. The fumbling issue is starting to come back up again. And so, he's not helping his case whatsoever. He's hurting this team, and it doesn't help that his offensive line is all banged up, and his offensive line just isn't good. It doesn't help that Saquon Barkley is missing games. It doesn't help that his receiving core is a bottom half receiving core in the league. And so, the New York Giants, as of right now, I think the only way you go from here is to kind of just address what you need in the offseason. That's the best way I can put it. Because if you just continue to come into the season with Isaiah Hodgins as your wide receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell, that can only take you so far. And you're already dealing with the Saquon Barkley issue. You're able to franchise tag him and then give him that 1-year contract extension. So now he'll be up for a new deal in this upcoming offseason. That's a whole another issue that you have to deal with. It's like, as of right now, they just need to pick what side of the fence they want to be on. Are they going to be a team that's going to be contending for a playoff spot each and every year? Or are they just going to go into a full-on reset, a full-on rebuild, and then move forward from there? Because their defense has been extremely terrible and underwhelming so far in this season. I mean, they haven't been able to stop absolutely anybody throughout these 4 weeks. And like I said, it doesn't get any easier when you have to go up against Tyreek and Jalen Waddle this upcoming week, and those guys are coming off a terrible loss up in Buffalo, and so it's not. They're going to start off the season about 1-6, not 1-6, but their record right now 1-3. So they're going to start off the season about 1-5. At that point, now you're going to have to start contemplating whether or not Saquon Barkley is going to be available for you for the majority of the season. Saquon Barkley, a guy who's looking to get paid, is not going to put himself at risk to get himself injured again. I know he's trending in the right direction to possibly play this week or just miss this week and fully come back the next week. But another knick-knack injury happens to Saquon Barkley, he's going to be gone. And so now, again, all the pressure will be on Daniel Jones. All the eyes will be on Brian Daboll to make something happen in this upcoming season. which leads me into my next question. Do we believe last year was a fluke based on what we're seeing so far right now?
I wouldn't say it was a fluke. I think Brian Dable did enough with his team with in terms of creativity and personnel. I think he played to the strengths of this roster. He put Daniel Jones in a position where he didn't need to throw the ball that much and was able to really make plays with his feet. The defense, they played better as the season went on. Offensive line still had some issues, but they're playing much better than they are this year. You had Saquon Barkley there. I feel like Brian Dable just essentially played to the strengths of his personnel, and that's what was able to really get them to win, even in the playoff game. Daniel Jones making plays with his feet, Saquon Barkley running the football, the defense making timely stops. I think that I don't think last year was a fluke, but I really think last year kind of sold them ideas about how closer to his roster than they really are, like in terms of its quality. I think they're much farther than they really anticipated, and so I don't think last year was a fluke, but definitely like this year with the injuries that are piling up and how bad that their wide receiver core is, and Daniel Jones under pressure. I think that last year kind of sold them dreams about it.
I don't think last year was a fluke. I mean, Daniel Jones, like Dabo came in, he kept Daniel Jones from making the turnovers or simple mistakes that he was making the year before. They trusted the run game early on in the season. Saquon, fantastic start to last year in the beginning of the season. The first 10 games, he was phenomenal. And the offense was clicking, and defense too. They underrated the defense coming into last year. They played great, to grit. They were fighting every possession. I just feel like this year teams are, even with Saquon missing, and they're giving up a lot of yards, and the offense is still the same issues. Even last year when we talked about them, we mentioned them talking about how they still didn't have a number one option on the receiver end. Sometimes the offense, it was scrape to go for them. It's either Saquon gets into the end zone or, Jones might have a rushing touchdown, but a lot of it was field goals or some of it came from defense. And then now this year, they're getting nothing on the offensive side of the ball and nothing from the defensive side of the ball. But I don't think it's a fluke. It's just that they didn't address the issues that they needed to do in the offseason. I feel like they came into this offseason and they missed on a lot of stuff that they needed to address. I feel like they should have drafted a receiver in the first round, and felt like they should have, gone into free agency and try to get a receiver or regroup the old line and fix that up. But they didn't do any of that. They came back into the next season with the same squad, and I mean the only way you can go up is just, keep on evolving, keep on adjusting, and keep on moving up. But you can't be stuck with the same type of player, same type of system, same type of scheme where it wasn't really working, but it was okay for you guys, and they didn't switch out of that. So for me, this upcoming offseason, they gotta make some moves. I mean, T. Higgins is probably going to be available, and a couple other receivers on the market are going to be available. And fix that online to give Daniel Jones a chance to throw the ball at least and see what he can do with it. But we gotta wait till the end of the season. I feel like I did mention in the early season, even with Saquon holding out, if they do start off 1-5, 1-6, their season's over. So that's what it's looking like. I mean, you have a first round pick. You get a top 5 pick. There's some talented receivers up there. So who knows what they can do with that pick, but we'll see what happens.
Talented receiver, a lot of talented quarterbacks, which leads me into my last question about this New York Giants team. Let's say these guys end up with a top 5, top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. Do the Giants move off from Daniel Jones after this season?
I think to them, it really kind of depends on how he ends out this season. I think if he goes out on this season and he just plays out flat out terrible, like reminiscent of the old Daniel Jones, and he kind of performs like that, I think the Giants have no issue drafting a quarterback. They'll find a way to attempt to try to weasel out of that contract, even though it is problematic that they gave him one in the first place. But I do think
his contract something like after 2 years, it's like they can't like not cancel, but like reconstruct it or like.
Yeah, I think after the second year is where they have a lot more options. So like obviously it would be this year, and then the next year Daniel Jones would be on the roster. But I think they have no problem if Daniel Jones ends up the season on a terrible stretch, or he plays well below his standards. Then I think they have no problem moving on from him.
I mean, the way they're heading right now, I mean, if their record continues to be, they land that top 3 pick, which is what they're heading to. I mean, Caleb Williams available, and they get that option. Taking that, try to get a star receiver like T. Higgins and somebody else in the free agency, and just go with that. This type of league right now, you need a guy that can get the ball down the field. You need a guy that can make plays with his legs in the pocket, and be that type of pocket passer. And I feel like Daniel Jones is not that guy for the situation. So if they do land a top 5 pick and Caleb Williams is there, they got to go get him.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.